Hi, you guys. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. I'm surprisingly nervous. I haven't done a long share like this in a long time. And I had my daughter turned 12. So she had 9 people spend the night at my house last night, 9 12-year-olds. And so it was bananas. It was just bananas. My house looks like a hurricane hit it. It is just, there's glitter everywhere. Um, I am so grateful to be here. Jay, thank you so much for asking me to speak. The month of November is a really special month for me because it's the month that I got sober. I got sober November 23rd, 2001. So, God willing, on the 23rd, I'll have 23 years. And somebody told me the other day, it's my golden birthday. And it is. It really and truly is. I grew up in Texas, so the more nervous I get, the more y'alls you will hear. And I lost the accent a little bit, but I get nervous and it just comes flying out. I uh, I grew up in Texas and I always had a God-sized hole. I didn't really realize that's what I was experiencing until I got sober and heard somebody say that. But my whole life, I felt different. I felt like everybody got a playbook and I didn't get a playbook. And everybody knew what to say and how to act and what to wear and, drifted blissfully along in life. And I overthought, I overcorrected, I was a perfectionist, I was worried about everybody else's opinion of me. And that's what my whole life felt like, even as a little kid, as far back as I can remember. I would be like, is anybody else thinking? Is anybody else worried? And I was just a worried, stressed out, you know, little kid. And I grew up at a really nice place in Dallas, but we didn't have very much money. So it was this really weird thing where like we kind of had to pretend like we did, but we really didn't. And so I was constantly insecure. I always felt less than everybody else. And the only thing that I was taught was you needed to look good and you needed to make good grades and you needed to be a good girl. That was what I was told, be a good girl. And that was literally my early childhood. My parents got divorced. It was very public, very dramatic. Um, and then I had something that I could blame, and since I've been sober, I've looked back on that, and it was my alcoholism at that point. I was a little kid, but I was looking for something outside of myself to blame for my behavior or how I was feeling or how I was thinking. I didn't have the self-awareness to work on myself or think about my part or make amends to those that I had harmed. I was a victim. It was your fault. It was their fault. I'm doing this because of you. I'm hurting me because of you. And I really found the cure, I thought, for that when I drank for the first time. And I drank for the first time at 14. It was after my 8th grade year going into high school. And it was Zima. Does any of you remember Zima when it came out on the market? Very old. I don't think they sell it anymore. Something different. That was the advertisement. And all of our friends, my good friends, we each got 4. And I finished my 4, and then I started drinking everybody else's immediately. I mean, from first drink, I was like, wow, I feel different. I want more. This is filling the God-sized hole. I finally feel complete. I want more. And so, that was from that moment on, from 14. And I got sober at 21. So I downward spiraled like real fast. Um, I was off to the races. I mean, I felt alive. I felt complete, and it was all that I wanted to do. But I was brought up in a place where you also had to be perfect. So it was always this very delicate balancing act. It was drink on Friday, run in a track meet on Saturday, drink on Saturday, cheer a game on Monday. It was, you have to do all the things, you have to make the good grades, you have to look good while you're doing it. And everything was always a constant fix up. So something would happen, I would drink, something would happen. And then the next day I would like spend the whole day ironing it out so that I could do it again. I was constantly like a hamster on a wheel. I would create a crisis and then I would have to clean up a crisis so that I could create a crisis again. And that's how I lived. That's how I lived in high school in Texas. It was very much like that old movie, Varsity Blues. It was all football and cheerleading and Texas and drinking and beer. And that's what my childhood was. And I always surrounded myself with people that were exactly like me or a little bit worse. And that therefore I could just turn and be like, I'm not as bad as that person. I'm not doing what they're doing. But of course, eventually I did. So I continued on in high school in Texas, and I started to have those, pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization moments. My drinking progressed really fast. I started having blackouts probably by the time I was 16, where I wouldn't remember big chunks of the night, and I wouldn't like cease to function. So I would drink, I would black out, but then I would like come to somewhere else still awake. And so it was always this very shameful, what have I been doing for the last 2 hours or 3 hours? And then, I actually don't know if we can talk about substances on this meeting, but I'll just allude to it. So, substances came into play, and that allowed me to stay up later, party longer, drink more. And so drinking became not like a one evening activity, it became like a 2-day activity. And then it became like a 3-day activity. It was really funny when I came into the rooms and looked around. I came into the rooms and looked around for the first time, and I was like, I'm not one of you. I never did this or I never did this. And I looked back on it years later, and in high school, I had a bottle of alcohol under my bed. I hid bottles in my room in high school. I was what it says in the book. I was the hiding bottles around, couldn't function without it, alcoholic from sip one. And honestly, I'm so grateful for that. I am so grateful that my life went down in flames so fast. Continuing on, everything started to get worse. When I drank, I thought I was like a 6'5", 300-pound linebacker for like the Packers or something. I mean, I thought I was huge, and I would fight people. I had big words. I'm very short. And so it was very funny, I'm sure, to everybody around, but I would get in your face, and I was angry, and I was mean, and I would curse at you, and I was aggressive. And, I thought people being afraid of me would keep them at arm's length. They were afraid of me, or, I liked to be bad. That's how I kept people away. I just kept everybody at arm's length. Because I didn't know who I was. I was ashamed of who I was. And I thought that if you knew me, the real me, you couldn't possibly like me. So I created so many different facades. I was either the cheerleader, I was trying to fight you in a bar, or I was, I could be any type of thing at any moment. And it was exhausting. It was exhausting. It was exhausting to be so many different people all the time. And all of the consequences kept getting worse. So I graduated from high school. My parents wanted me to go to school on the East Coast. So I went to the University of Southern California as my like little rebellious move. And, I arrived there, and I think I had that alcoholic thought of it's going to be different, a geography change, it's going to be different. And I was the same me in California that I was in Texas. And, all of the things that I was running from found me day one. Day one, I was blackout drinking. Day one, I had found the people in the dorms that partied like I did. I had no supervision at that point, so I could just party as much as I wanted to. You know, a couple of the really more mortifying highlights were, you know, I passed out one night and woke up in the downtown Los Angeles ER, you know, getting my stomach pumped. I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what happened. You know, I was fighting the doctors. It was, I look back on that experience and I think, who is that person? You know, who is that person that was doing that, you know, and I would come back in to whatever social circle I was in, and it was all excuses. It was this person's fault, or it wasn't my fault, or the doctor did this, or the paramedics did that. It was never, I had no accountability. I had no desire to get sober. I had no higher power. I was a shell. I was a true shell of a human being. After my sophomore year, one of my favorite drinking stories, after my sophomore year, we had a family reunion in Alabama. My family's very Southern, in like the deep South part. And so we were in Alabama, and I was at a family reunion with my entire family. I drank too much, obviously, and I got arrested in front of my family for drunk and disorderly conduct. It was great. It was a good moment. It was great waking up in the jail in Alabama. And it was, you know, all of these things that happened. I'm like, I look back and I'm like, where was the white light experience? You know, where was the moment where I would be like, okay, you know, now's the time to get sober. But I didn't even know what sober was. My whole thing was I wanted to drink like a normal person. Mind you, I'm 20 years old at the time and the legal drinking age is 21, but I wanted to drink like a normal person. You know, I came home and I didn't go back to college, and all the consequences started to get worse. You know, I would disappear for days upon days upon days. You know, my parents were always worried, my siblings were always worried, my friends were always worried. I would be at a bar and then I would vanish. You know, or I would, you know, say I was going to be somewhere and I would never show up, or say I'm going to go home and I'm not going to go home. I pulled the disappearing act. That was my MO. I'd find the shadiest people in any location and I would leave with those people. I put myself in horribly dangerous situations. I got incredibly lucky, but horribly dangerous situations with really scary, dangerous people, you know, walking around downtown LA at 2 a.m. by myself. And, you know, going into shady people's shady houses. And I'm very grateful that I was able to get out of those situations moderately unscathed. So finally, and what I love about sharing in November, again, is that all of the events of 23 years ago, like the order of events is exactly timely to where I am now. So it was my birthday this past week. On the 7th, I turned 44. And so 23 years ago, I had turned 21. And so I turned 21 on the 7th and I got sober on the 23rd. So I drank legally for a very short amount of time. But I can see all of those events in my mind so clearly from the last month of November. You know, the build up to Thanksgiving, the standard alcoholic, I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm going to just have 2 drinks. I'm going to go out with my friends, and then I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to have a great Thanksgiving. You know, all of the grandiose thoughts in my head. I'm going to be fine. It's fine. And it wasn't, because it never was. You know, I thought I could drink 2 drinks every time I drank. And every time I drank, it was a roll of the dice. And I had no idea what was going to happen. So I tried it again, tried the 2 drinks again, didn't happen. All of a sudden it was 9 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving, and I was supposed to be home. I was supposed to be cooking. I was in a divorced family, so we did 3 Thanksgivings in one day. Step family, mom's family, dad's family. It was a big day, lots of eating. And I'd already missed one, and I was supposed to be cooking for the second one. And I came home and my mom asked, you know, have you been drinking? And I was like, no, of course not. No. And she's like, well, I have this test that I can give you to see And I was like, of course I was self-righteous, and I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not taking that test. How dare you ask me? Um, but something happened at that moment. I decided to go somewhere where I knew that I could be alone. And I had this like very deep, dark depression that washed over me. And I thought, I cannot live like this anymore. I had been introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought it wasn't for me. Um, I thought nobody my age got sober. I thought that's just not real. All these people are lying. All of these people are, drinking on the side. I had all of these excuses. This doesn't work. How could these 12 steps work? But in that moment, I was so incredibly overwhelmed by sadness that on Thanksgiving Day, when I'm supposed to be with my family, I was alone, um, in the same position I'd been hundreds of times, um, where I was, it was pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization again. And I decided at that moment that I was just going to end it all. I'd always kind of like dabbled with suicidal ideation, just in the sense of like, I don't want to be here, or nobody loves me, or, all of those kind of self-pity sort of things. But this one was more of like I don't know how to get out of this. And so I had a very, 21-year-old suicide attempt. And I ended up in the hospital, on Thanksgiving Day. And, my wrists were all taped up, and they have to transfer you from the hospital to the psych ward. And all of it's so vague. And I woke up about 2 days later. And I woke up in a psych ward 2 days after Thanksgiving with no plastic bags, no shoelaces, no razor blades, no nothing. And the first thought that came into my head, the very first thought was, uh-oh, you've really done it this time. How do we talk our way out of this? It was not, I need to get sober. I need to ask for help. How do I make amends? It was my alcoholic brain said, how do I get out of this? What card can I play? How can I manipulate the situation so that I can still keep drinking? Because honestly, I would have done anything at that point just to be able to drink like a normal human being. My parents didn't buy it. I don't know. And they told me that I was going to a spa for 30 days to rest, and that I needed to pack my riding boots and my bathing suit. And it was going to be so relaxing. And it was in Mississippi. And so I should have known at that moment, no offense, Jay, that they were lying to me. And was not Sierra Tucson, gosh darn it. And they sent me to this program in the middle of the woods in Mississippi. And I arrived like an absolute entitled tornado. Black trench coat, dark glasses, I don't want to be here. This is not nice. I can't do this. Who are these people? Blah, blah, blah. It was 30 days of that. 30 days of I'm leaving. I hate you. Don't talk to me. F this. I don't want you. I don't want this way of life. I don't need to be sober. I'm not an alcoholic. 30 days, I fought like a bull, like a raging bull for 30 days. And finally, on the 30th day, one of my counselors looked at me and she said, you know what, you're probably not going to make it. Like, there's 50 people, 50 ladies here. Like, you're just going to be one of the ones that don't make it. And, the odds are stacked against you. She's like, but why don't you just try to do one thing that we ask you? Because I hadn't done one thing that anyone had asked me the whole time. And I said, okay. I mean, I basically just like a 3-year-old had a 30-day tantrum and was just worn out. And I got on my knees and I prayed for the first time, I think, ever in my life. And I said this to Jay before, but I think that it opened this like vaulted, cemented door. It opened just a tiny, tiny, tiny little crack. And I felt relief. I felt God come in, a God I had never really prayed to, that I didn't know. but I felt all of a sudden I felt a little bit better. It wasn't a white light. It wasn't something super dramatic, but in a quiet space in the middle of the woods in Mississippi, I opened the door just a little bit and I felt better. I did one thing that somebody asked me to do. And so then I was kind of hooked. I was like, okay, well, I did that one thing, I'll do a couple more things, and they had us do a gratitude list every night. And the first time that I did it, I was grateful for a turkey sandwich, because I was still kind of a smart ass, but it was delicious. It was a delicious turkey sandwich. And the gratitude list started to grow, and they started to be so many simple things. I'm grateful for this cup of coffee. I'm grateful that my clothes are clean. I'm grateful that, the kitchen's clean, that I have food in it, that I'm not freezing. I mean, the list of things on the gratitude list grew, and they weren't the big things that I always wanted, the nice cars or the fancy purses or anything like that. I was literally just grateful to be alive. And that was the first time I think I felt gratitude in my whole life. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind that sitting in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people from all walks of life, from everywhere in the world, that I could be grateful for a turkey sandwich and mean it in my heart of hearts. Like, I feel truly grateful to be alive. So I started to do what they said. So I'm in Mississippi. I'm in a program. It's a 4-month program with a 3-month outpatient program. And I called my parents and I said, I want to stay the whole time. I want to do all 7 months in Mississippi. And they just about fell out of their chairs. And I was like, I want to do it. I want to stay. And I want to do what they say. So I started to do the work. And that's kind of, when I think about this program, it's work and it's miracles. It's work and it's miracles. It's work and it's miracles. And it's trudging. And I think Jay told me trudging is to walk with purpose. But in my mind, trudging is like really sticky mud. And you're just kind of like trudge through it. And so sometimes you're trudging and then you like get unstuck and then you're trudging again. And I love that. I love that we get to trudge. So I'm in Mississippi. I pick the scariest lady in the room to be my sponsor. Her name was Paula. She was terrifying. She only had 2 years sober at the time. And I look back on it and it was, she was amazing. She knew that I could do absolutely nothing for myself. I was 21 years old. I was newly sober. I had never done a thing. I had never really taken care of myself. I had gone up and I had gone to college, but that was it. So I didn't know how to balance a checkbook. I didn't know how to make dinner. I didn't know how to dress appropriately for meetings. I didn't know how to make coffee. I didn't know how to go to the grocery store. So she had me come over to her house and work steps with her. And her house was crazy. She had kids running around everywhere and dogs. And she was always cooking dinner when I was working the steps. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, like she's so busy. She doesn't have time for me. It's always crazy. It's always this, it's always that. Mind you, it's all about me. This is a mom with 2 years sober with 3 kids at a full-time job. And she's walking me through the steps. So I just should have been grateful for the crumbs. But she was teaching me how to do all the things. She was teaching me how to be a mom. She was teaching me how to make dinner. She was teaching me to sit with her. She would invite me every night to sit with her family and have dinner after we worked steps. And I look back on that and I will be forever grateful for that experience, because she gave something of herself. I'm a mom now with kids and we have almost no time. It's crazy the amount of time, my beautiful little miracles soak up all day long. But she gave of this time and she worked these steps, and I called her every day, and I would call her and I would say, Paula, and then I'd like, da, this is happening, and this person wronged me, and this person this, and she'd be like, What have you done for somebody else today? Click. And she would just hang up the phone. And she was hardcore. And that is what I needed. I needed a hardcore sponsor that was going to make me do the work and was going to yank me along. And every step was fast. So it was clear that I was powerless over alcohol and that my life was unmanageable. I was sitting in the middle of the woods in Mississippi in the winter. It was clear. It was obvious. Did I have a higher power? No. Did I believe in a higher power? Not really. Did I believe that you guys had higher powers and that it was working for you? Yes. And so I came to believe in kind of a roundabout sort of way. I came to believe that y'all's higher powers worked for you. And maybe a higher power could work for me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was nature or a spirit or God or, I couldn't conceptualize what a higher power was. I knew that there had to be something bigger than me because it was a miracle that I was still alive. It was a miracle that I was getting sober. And so I knew that there was something bigger. And I was willing to turn my will and my life over to that, because turning my will and my life over to Paige had not worked. I hadn't been able to take care of Paige my whole life. And so I needed something bigger than me. And so Paula and I got down on our knees in her crazy, chaotic living room with dogs and kids and things frying and all the stuff going on. And we said the third step prayer. And it was slightly mortifying, but slightly magical. And I don't think I really got the magnitude of that moment until I was able to go home and reflect on it. That, I got down on my knees with another woman and turned my will and my life over to God. And I didn't know if it was going to work. It was a total leap of faith. I saw other people sober and I was like, well, maybe if they're doing it, then it will work for me. And so I worked the steps, not because I believed that they would work. I hoped that they would work, but because it was working for y'all. And I could see miracles all around me. The people that I went through treatment with, the people in the rooms, they were all miracles and they were all doing this one thing. And so I was willing to try. I didn't think I deserved it. I thought I was completely undeserving of anything good at this point, but I was willing to try. So Paula made me work all of the steps really fast. She gave me 2 weeks to do my fourth step. And that was like, no ifs, ands, or buts. Like if it wasn't done, we were doing it anyway, and then we would do it again, the next time through. But she's like, you have 2 weeks, put all your resentments on flashcards, come to my house. So I went to her house and I did the fifth step, which was, the promises that they say in the fifth step promises did not really occur to me at the time. I was riddled with shame. I grew up in an environment where they said you had to be perfect, and I was absolutely not perfect. I did shameful things. I hurt people. And so I couldn't get out from under that doing the fifth step. I left the fifth step thinking, God, I'm really, really not a good person. I've done some pretty horrible things, but Paula let me know that she had also done those things and some other things, and that I wasn't alone. And I think that for me was enough. I looked forward in the steps, obviously, and realized that at some point I was going to have to say that I was sorry. And I was really not looking forward to that. So that kind of dimmed a little bit of the initial joy. And but she had me start immediately. So I did 6 and 7 at her house. She said, go home immediately, look at this list of people from your resentments, and we're going to start doing, 8 and 9. So within another 2 weeks, I was doing 8 and 9. And I'm so grateful for the fact that this incredibly busy woman, had time to make me, this entitled, bratty, clueless 21-year-old kid, do these things. She did this for free, for me, for nothing else but then to change my whole life. this woman changed my whole life, and she did it for free for me to help her stay sober. And to me, that blows my mind. Um, and that was a long time ago, and it still blows my mind. So I started working on the 9th step. It says in the promises, you'll be amazed before we are halfway through. And so what Paula said to me is, if I have 100 amends to make, I will be amazed before I have completed 50. So before we're halfway through, she took it very literally. And I was like, okay, I need to do 50 amends out of 100, and I'm going to feel different. And I'll be damned. It was a miracle. I mean, I started doing amends and I felt different, period, the end. Like, with every amends I did, I felt different. I felt like I could look the world in the eye. I felt alone at perfect peace. I felt like I could walk into a room and not think that the whole room was talking about me, and what I had done and things I had said. She made me drive all over the map, making amends to people. I had to make amends to former employers. I had to make amends to every single member of my family and extended family. Anybody that I had ever caused worry to, and that was a long, long list, because I had caused worry to a lot of people, but I was amazed before I was halfway through. And I had a new freedom and a new happiness. And I will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it is something that I work on to this day, because there's still times I think about things that I did that I'm like, oh, with like a tinge of regret and shame. But I don't wish to shut the door on it because I don't wish to repeat it. She taught me how to do inventories at night, spot check my day, stay close to God, and then to help other people. So when I was 1 year sober at age 22, she told me I had worked all 12 steps. I was 1 year sober, that I could raise my hand in a meeting. And when they said, is there anybody willing to be a sponsor? They did it in every meeting in Mississippi. And she was like, you can raise your hand. And I can honestly say, in my 22 years of life at that point, I had never been more proud. I had never been more proud to raise my hand. And it was a simple act. It was one act. I raised my hand in the air, and it was something that I can still remember where I was, who was there when I raised my hand for the first time. I was so proud. Butterflies, so excited that I could then serve. Meanwhile, I mean, she had made me do service work all along, but to me, it was amazing. It was amazing. And I still get chills thinking about the fact that it was just raising my hand. So I stayed in Mississippi for 2.5 years. I finished college there. I went from the crazy sorority girl at USC who was out all night to the nerdy girl that sat in the front row, always did the reading, and went to the professor's office hours every single day. They probably thought I had no friends, which I absolutely did not have any friends. They were the only people that I talked to in college, but I sat in the front row and I did all the reading, and it was the best 2 years. It was the best 2 years of my life, because I went to meetings, I hung out with sober people. It wasn't, am I going to the meeting? That was never the question. It was, am I going to dinner before the meeting, or am I going to dinner after the meeting? Or am I meeting you for coffee before the meeting, or am I meeting you for coffee after the meeting? It was meetings every day, and it was sober hangouts, and it was all of these silly, miraculous, simple experiences, but for the first time. It was like it says in the book that we're all, on a boat, and we've been saved, and we're all together, and we're joyous, and we're happy, and because we survived. It was the simple act of just surviving to be there, and it was fun, and it was carefree, and it was silly, and it was goofy, and it was AA potlucks and organizing, the Mississippi conference for young people in AA, and which is which we felt so big and responsible, but we were kids, we were newly sober and we were organizing these conferences and making bologna sandwiches. It was pink clouding it to the nth degree. It was unbelievable. And I look back on that time and I'm just like, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I got this chance to grow up in this program and to be taught by the most amazing women, and some men, no offense, maybe just Jay, but mostly women. And it was just to be taught how to be a woman in the world, a worker among workers, a student among students, and then later on, a mom among moms. So in my sobriety recovery journey, I've moved from Mississippi to Arizona. Arizona was my first job. I was also following my treatment boyfriend, for being totally honest. He was moving to Arizona. That obviously did not work out. Massive explosion there. And, but I learned how to move. I learned how to arrive in a state, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps again, get into service, and not drink. I learned how to be a worker that went to a job every day and worked and, had a respectable career and not drink. And to say like, you're going to happy hour, that's great. I'm not. I don't drink. And then I moved to Texas. I moved back to Texas, and which was home for me, which was really fun. And got a sponsor, worked the steps, went to meetings, raised my hands, was of service. The book says you can go anywhere a free man can go as long as you're spiritually fit. And that's what I learned from my amazing sponsors along the way, is I had to be spiritually fit. And for me, being spiritually fit is going to meetings, having a sponsor, being honest with my sponsor, telling her the truth, having sponsees, and being of service. In whatever capacity, even if I'm the timer, be the bestest, proudest little timer you can be. And that's what Paula taught me. And that's what all of my sponsors have taught me. When I was in Dallas, I reconnected with somebody that I had met in college, and who did not know me sober, and we reconnected and I was sober. And about 6 months in, I told my family and all my friends that I was moving to California to be with this person, and they all thought I was crazy. And that's my husband now. So I, moved back out to California, and same deal. Actually, not the same deal. When I moved to California, I did it wrong. I didn't go to as many meetings. I didn't get a sponsor right away. I tried to keep my sponsor in Dallas. I didn't do all the things that I needed to do. And in a 6-month period of time from being in California, my sobriety kind of unraveled. I think at that point I felt, I had 7 or 8 years at that point, and I was like, okay, I'm good. And I was not good. It's amazing how fast a program can unravel when you're not doing the deal. And for me, I wasn't doing the deal. And I actually had to reach out to a couple people and say, I'm not okay. I need help. I need to be guided. And so through friends of friends of friends of friends, these people connected me to this amazing group of women in Southern California. And I got back on track. I didn't drink, thank God. I didn't do anything that I regretted. At this point, I'm not necessarily worried about drinking, although I do know that that's always a possibility, but I feel like that's been removed from me. I am more likely to like burn someone's house down than I am to drink today. I'm trying to keep a lid on that first before the drinking. And so I started going to meetings. I got another amazing sponsor. I had an amazing sponsor in Mississippi. I had an amazing sponsor in Arizona, one in Texas, another one in Southern California. These are women doing this for fun and for free. She walked me through the steps again. I got my life back on track. I made an amazing group of female friends. And then 7 years ago, my husband said, we should move to Bend, Oregon. And I'm like, where the heck is Bend, Oregon? I thought it was on the coast of Oregon. It is not on the coast for anybody that doesn't know where it is. It is in the middle of the state of Oregon. No coast to be found. But we moved up here 7 years ago with our two daughters. And, I met a wonderful woman up here, and I went to my first meeting with her, and she said, I have two commitments. Why don't you be the chip person? And I said, oh my God. Okay, fine. And then I asked her to be my sponsor, and she said, well, you need to call me every single day, and you need to take a picture of a gratitude list and send it to me every single morning. And I was like, lady, I have been sober for 13 years, maybe 15 years at that point. And I was like, I need to call you every day. And she's like, yep, you need to call me every day. So I called her every single day for 30 days and sent her a picture of my gratitude list. Because for me, the miracles only happen from the work. And I like the miracles. I love the miracles of this program. They didn't just happen in Mississippi, those 2.5 years that I was there and newly sober and going to meetings, twice a day, every day. They happen now. And I got a sponsor, I worked the steps, and the miracles continued to happen. This past summer, my youngest daughter had got sick. And I have two girls. They're 9 and 12 now. At the time, they were 8 and 11. So it was my 8-year-old daughter started experiencing back pain. And we took her to the doctor, and we got scans, and we got that call that no parent wants to hear. There's a tumor in her spine. It's very aggressive. You need to immediately drive to a big city and admit to a hospital, which is what we did. We drove to Portland and admitted to OHSU. And for 5 days, they didn't know what was going on. They did biopsies, they did MRIs, they did all the things. And then we went home, and they didn't know. We talked to them every day. They had no idea what it was. It's lymphoma, it's sarcoma, it's leukemia, it's everything ended in a series of letters that meant cancer. And all I could do, and this was in June and July of the summer, all I could do at that point was pray. All I could do was fully surrender. 5 minutes. I saw you on mute.
6.
All I could do was pray. And, I'd been sober for 22 years, and I had a relationship with a higher power who has evolved over time. This higher power that I didn't know 22, almost 23 years ago is now this benevolent, loving, non-shaming, kind, gentle, caring being. My mom is a solid Texan, solid Christian from Texas. And she's like, you just need to be God-fearing. You just need to be God-fearing. And I'm like, I don't fear my God. My God loves me. My God knows what I'm going to do. My God loves me for those things. I am not God-fearing. I am God-loving, and God loves me. So she was sick. It was a month before we got the results of all of those scans. The hospital ended up not knowing what it was and having to send it out to another hospital in Cincinnati. And it ended up being this very rare disease that was not cancer. So for 30 days, it was chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, treatment. You're going to need to live in a different city for 6 months. We don't know if she's going to live. We need to harvest her eggs. She will never run again. She will never play sports again. Her life will not be the same. That's what it was for 30 days. And then at 30 days, the doctor called and said, it's not that. And it's going to heal on its own, and her bone is going to grow back because it had eaten like a bite size of her spine. And that was a miracle. It was an absolute honest to God miracle. Just a miracle, because it wasn't supposed to be that, they didn't prepare us for that. It wasn't supposed to be that. That was an absolute miracle. There were a million miracles along the way. The biggest one being that I was sober the whole time. I was there with her. I was with my family. I was doing all the things, right? Just because I'm sober doesn't mean I don't do the things, I'm talking to my sponsor. I'm talking to my sponsees. My sponsee, Talisa, that's on the call, pretty much took a hold of and managed my whole life. It was a miracle of this program. It was women helping women, again, for free, taking care of me when I couldn't take care of myself, putting their fear aside, putting their terror aside, putting their grief aside so that they could help me in the worst hours of my life, for every consecutive hour for those 30 days. Another miracle, probably the biggest miracle of all, other than not drinking, was that my connection with a higher power is something I've never experienced in 23 years of being sober. I know that I had turned it over. I had turned my alcoholism over. I had been powerless over alcohol. I admitted my life was unmanageable. I couldn't turn my kids over. Nope, nope, nope. I had done so many fears inventories with sponsors since I had kids, and I was like, nope, I'm sorry. I will not turn them over to God. I will handle my children. And in that 30 days, I was like, I had to turn them over. I had to turn her over to God, knowing that it was going to be God's will and not my will. And that was the biggest thing I've ever had to turn over in my life. And I think I will ever have to turn over, was the safety and the well-being and the lives of my kids. It was an absolute miracle, and the miracles keep coming. The miracles keep coming. Every day is an absolute miracle. I survived a 9-girl sleepover last night. That's a freaking miracle. I am very tired. I did not sleep, but it was a miracle. And the biggest thing that I can leave you with is, when my husband and I found out, when we got that call, it's cancer, you need to drop everything and leave for the hospital call, we kept looking back on that moment, and saying, wow, just 5 minutes before that moment, when we had all these tiny little stresses, like, oh, what are we going to have for dinner? Or, oh, the kids are bugging us, or, oh, we need to pay for this, or, oh, this appliance broke, or whatever. That was nothing. That was joy. Those were miracles. That every day, every moment, every second was a miracle. And it's just recognizing that those miracles are happening right in front of you all day, every day. That was the biggest miracle I got. Just waking up in the morning is a miracle, and it was a pretty amazing lesson, and my God is pretty amazing. And I'm really grateful that you guys asked me, or that Jay asked me to speak. So that's all that I have.
Yay. Oh my God. Let me stop.